For our text today, we have two verses. One, Genesis 37, verse 2, in which we're going to say hello to the man named David. And then we're going over to chapter 50 of Genesis and read verse 26 and say goodbye to David. And then we'll come back in our message and look at what happened in between. Genesis 37, 2, this is the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Now we go over to the last verse of the entire book of Genesis, chapter 50, verse 26. So Joseph died being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. And may God use the blessing of his word today. In the classic Walt Disney movie entitled Mary Poppins, Mary is interviewing for the job of being a nanny to two young children. In the interview, the children's stern and serious dad tells Mary, he actually sang it in the movie, what his philosophy was about raising and rearing children. And it was, the children must be molded, shaped, and taught that life is a battle to be faced and fought. Now in that movie, that dad was not the brightest bulb in the box, but he got that part of it right when he said that life is a battle. And that's so true. For life lived here on earth is full of battles that we have to face and fight. And that was especially true of this man named Joseph. From the time he was 17, in the first verse we read, to the time when he passed away at 110, in the last verse we read, Joseph faced many, many battles. Now, obviously, we don't have time to look at all of them today, but we're going to look at 4 of the battles he faced, which just happened to be 4 of the same battles that you and I have to face. The first battle is the one of self-pity. Self-pity. In Genesis 37, Joseph is attacked by his own siblings. They strip him of his clothes, they beat him up, and they throw him into a pit to die. But then his siblings see a way to make a quick buck. And so they have a change of heart, and they then sell Joseph to a group of slave traders. Now these slave traders then take Joseph over to Egypt, where they resell him to an Egyptian official named Potiphar. Now here's Joseph. He's lost all of his freedom. Not some of it, every bit of it. Here's Joseph. He's lost all his family. Not some of his family, but all of his family. Here's Joseph. He's lost all of his fortune. Not a portion of it, but every bit of it. Here's Joseph, and he's lost it all. And with his loss of his all, he is faced with the battle of self-pity. Well, did Joseph wallow in his self-pity over his loss? Did he throw himself a pity party? Did he take a seat on the pity pot? No. No, instead of giving in to self-pity, Joseph picked himself up and made such a good slave that Potiphar put him in charge of running his entire household. But then later on, Joseph is sent to prison on false charges and lies. Here again, he's facing a battle with self-pity. For here he is, locked up in a prison dungeon for having done absolutely nothing wrong at all. But here again, Joseph did not let self-pity defeat him. No, once again, he picked himself up and made such a good prisoner that the warden of the prison put him in charge of running the entire prison. So be it the pit, be it Potiphar, or be it the prison, Joseph faced, fought, and won the battle with self-pity. Then the second battle he had to fight was one of sexual immorality. Joseph, now serving as Potiphar's chief slave, Potiphar's wife tries to get Joseph to have sexual relations with her. Now, Joseph was a red-blooded male with the normal sexual desires and feelings, and I have little doubt that Potiphar's wife was probably very attractive and very appealing. And since she's the one making the advances, she's not going to tell anyone. So everything is set up and in place for Joseph and her to enter into this act of sexual immorality. He and she could have a blast, and no one would ever know about it. And yet, Joseph won this battle as well. He refused and rejected her sexual advances time and time again, even though it caused him to wind up in that prison that I mentioned a moment ago. So Joseph here has won these two hard-fought battles. But life is not through with Joseph, for it throws a third battle his way, the battle of success. Now, you may not think success is a battle, but I promise you, folks, it is. Later on in a series of events, Joseph is elevated to the second highest position in the Egyptian empire. He is second only to Pharaoh in terms of power. He answers to Pharaoh and to no one else. His power is absolute, unquestioned, and unchallenged. Joseph now lives in the best palace. He wears the best clothes. He eats the best food. He rides in the best chariot. He has the best of everything. He now is the second most powerful man on the face of the earth. Now, did all of this success go to Joseph's head? Did he abuse his success? Did he waste it, throw it away, and lose it? Did he allow his success to change him and turn him into a different person? No, not our Joseph. He was a very capable and compassionate ruler, a very smart and sincere ruler, a very wise and warm ruler. Unlike a lot of people, Joseph could handle success. Unlike a lot of people, Joseph won the battle with success. But then we find one more battle that Joseph had to fight, and that was a battle of spite. With Joseph now in power, he can get revenge on all those people that mistreated him. He can lower the hammer on Potiphar's wife for all those lies she told about him. He can lower the hammer on Potiphar for believing her lies. And he can lower the hammer on all those brothers of his for all they did to him and their dad. But Joseph, he won this battle. The battle was spite. He won it by not giving in to anger or bitterness or revenge. He never once retaliated against Potiphar or his wife. And he sure didn't retaliate against his siblings. You know what he did with them? He moved them to Egypt and gave them the best land, the best lodging, and the best life. Not one time did Joseph lower that hammer of power to get revenge. No. Joseph laid down the hammer and won the battle with spite. Now let's bring it home. As I said a moment ago, these are 4 battles that we all have to fight at one time in our lives. First of all, there's the battle with self-pity. Now, you know my heart. I've been your pastor for 13 years. If you don't know it by now, you'll never know it. I'm not being unkind. I'm not being insensitive. I'm not being cruel with what I'm about to say. I'm simply stating fact of life. And that is, whenever we lose a beloved person or possession in our life, there's always a temptation to give in to self-pity. And you all know that. Because you've lost close loved ones, I've lost close loved ones. And when that happens, there's always the temptation to give in to self-pity. And then there's sexual immorality. In our Western culture, Every day we have contact and dealings with members of the opposite sex. And because we do, there's always lurking in the shadows that temptation of sexual immorality. And then there's the battle of success. Now, none of us may never climb as high as Joseph did, but whenever we have success to any degree in any area, there's always a temptation that that success will go to our heads and mess up our heads and change us for the worst. And then there is the battle of spite. Because we live in a fallen world with fallen people, we can't get through life without being hurt and mistreated by people. And whenever that happens, there's that temptation lurking in the shadows for us to get even, to get our revenge, to strike back out of anger and bitterness. So in my humble opinion, these are 4 of the hardest battles that we face in life. Now, how do we win these battles? I hope you're listening. I really do. How do we win these battles? We don't. We don't. We don't win these battles in and of ourselves. We don't win these battles on our own, depending and relying on our strength and smarts. No, that's how we lose these battles. We win these battles the same way Joseph did, which is the only way to win these battles. We win these battles by depending and relying on the strength and smarts of our Lord. That's how we win these battles. We focus and fix our lives on Him. We center and concentrate our lives on Him. We follow His word, His will, and His way for our life. We give Him our life. We live for Him. We lean on Him. We listen to Him. We learn from Him. We love Him, and we stay loyal to Him. And folks, when we do that, we can and we will win these battles of life. But if we don't do that, we will lose the battles of life. So here's the bottom line. The battles of life, they're hard enough to win with Him, aren't they? The battles of life, they're impossible to win without Him. Remember that, my friends, as you face the battles of life.